are these people?
It brings me to my next article, which is from the ever detailed Alan McLeod, which I finally found an Alan McLeod article that isn't like 9 pages. So that's nice. Thank you, Alan. This is about how one spook-run London college department is training the world's social media managers. So a lot of these social media companies have had, like feds be shoved into them. And we'll get exactly into how Alan McLeod has laid all this out. But, they've also, I'm pretty sure it was, it might have been Alan, but it might have been Max, who talked about a couple of UK, like media influencers, were getting, information from Bellingcat, right? If I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I do remember, I'm trying to, Indy will remember the article I'm talking about if he's in chat. Anyway, did that have like a little blurb? No. Okay. So staffed by NATO military officers and former government ministers and notorious for training the West's top spies, the Department of War Studies at King's College London is also providing the workforce for many of the largest social media companies. This includes Facebook, TikTok, Google, and Twitter. Right?
Stop, pause right there. The fact is like a Department of War.
Mm-hmm. War Studies, yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's some shit that sounds like Saga and Jetty would get into.
Probably did at least a semester there.
It's probably just the Hudson Institute.
What's that thing where you don't get credit, but you go anyway? Like you audit? Isn't like auditing a class or whatever? You can like just sit into the class. You don't have to like, there's a thing. Anyway. So a Mint Press study of professional databases and employment websites reveals a wide network of War Studies alumni holding many of the most influential jobs in media, constituting a silent army of individuals who influence what the world sees and does not see in its social media feeds. I love capitalism fucking itself over. I love it. I love that. You just got to follow the money.
The got smart. Like they're just, they know that social media is trending and they know that it works.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Alan McLeod setting this up with Spy School, which would make a great movie. We had Monster High.
Spy Kid, not Spy Kid, Spy School.
Yeah, you go to Spy School.
What's that movie where like everyone in the high school has superpowers?
Sky High.
Another great movie of my childhood from the Disney Channel. Which I'm sure they also have plenty of, War Studies alumni over at Disney.
They're and CIA.
So, set in an imposing building near the banks of the River Thames in central London, the Department of War Studies is at the heart of the British establishment. Current staff includes the former Secretary General of NATO, former UK Ministry of Defence, and a host of military officers from NATO and NATO-aligned countries. So, it is also a favored training ground for the Secret Services. A 2009 report published by the CIA described how beneficial it is to use universities as means of intelligence training. I saw frequently right after the Howard sit-in that Afeni was a part of, I heard on the nice, polite Republican radio that the CIA did like a jobs program at Howard right after that. So
colleges, I've seen. I know a couple of people like who's like they've been to like job fairs and stuff.
Yep. So if you ever see someone on their LinkedIn with like CIA analyst training and stuff like that, and they were near Langley and going to college near there, you might question things. Like people at TYT and now Rolling Stone are letting write pieces for them. But I digress. It is also a favorite training ground. We reread that, right?
Yeah,
So We are not concerned here with the acquisition of subject knowledge or the honing of technique of analysis. Such teaching is best delivered in a secure environment with the classified databases and tools to which analysts would have access in their work. Exposure to an academic environment, such as the Department of War Studies at King's College London, can add several elements that may be harder to provide within the government system. Close access to academic disciplines such as military history, intelligence history, international relations, social studies, and so on. An introduction to the relevant literature and exposure to a variety of critical views, including the unorthodox. But most of all, it offers a containing space in which analysts from every part of the community can explore with ease. I imagine that was meant to be. In 2013, then Secretary of Defense and former CIA Director Leon Panetta gave a speech at the department. I deeply appreciate the work that you do to train and to educate our future national security leaders, many of whom are in this audience, he said, adding that exposure into tech surveillance and cyber warfare was of critical importance. Last year, Mint Press investigated the department's intelligence links more deeply. Moreover, the university has freely admitted to having entered into a number of secret funding alignment agreements with the UK Foreign Office and the Ministry of Defense. However, it was refused to elaborate on these contracts, telling investigative news outlets Declassified UK that doing so could undermine national security. Of course it could. Can't see what's going on behind those closed doors. No, sir. Or follow that money in this case. Where's it saying that funding was from? Has freely admitted having entered into a number of secret funding agreements with the UK Foreign Office. Right. Yeah, they're getting the good money from the, Madam Secretary over there, just handing out big checks. Right? So,
Gotcha.
we got to get that new ping pong table though in the break room. Anyway.
Yeah, we're gonna need some new lights right here.
Yeah, I'm getting new lights. Well, the Department of, well, the new department, well, shit. So while the Department of War Studies plays a key role in producing the West intelligence operatives, it also trains many of the world's top journalists, as well as social media managers whose task it is to protect us from the misinformation put out by the others. What does that sound like? As such, an essential part of the new high-tech information war being waged between Russia and the West, in which the national security state is increasingly taking control over the means of communication under the guise of protecting us from the Kremlin. So that's the official statements. Yeah. Disinformation's Governance Board, anyone? Sounds
This
familiar?
misinformation is better than their misinformation.
Right? Yeah. This is, thought speak. Speak thought.
The war of misinformation.
Yeah.
Who's better at misinformation?
You're going to Big Brother to tell you everyone else what to say, like with social media, pretty much.
Right.
So, but anyway, so we start with Facebook. At any one time, the department educates around 1,000 students, many of whom have gone on to become top military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and government officials, both in the West and in countries as disparate as Jordan, Nigeria, and Singapore. But increasingly, large numbers of war studies graduates are finding employment in the most influential media outlets on both the sides of the Atlantic and in Silicon Valley. So, chief amongst the social media companies where war studies graduates hold considerable sway is Facebook, now rebranded as Meta. For example, while working at senior levels in the UK government, Mark Smith pursued a master's at the department, completing it in 2009. Between 2007 and 2017, he worked for the Ministry of Defense, the Foreign Office, and the National Security Secretariat, which is not the horse. According to his own LinkedIn profile, he was deployed overseas 3 times as political advisor to top NATO military commanders and was a key figure in strategizing responses to ISIS and other terrorist groups, as well as working on the Ministry of Defense response to the Scottish independence question. So they try to control that narrative too. I wanted to bring up real quick because it happened. It just came out today. So I just had to go to my YouTube feed real quick. Joe Rogan had none other than, Zuck HD 3000. The newest edition of the Facebook owner robot. On his podcast. If I just find that real quick. I hear he drinks water and smokes meats.
Are you gonna play it? We might get copyright.
JRE's fine, I think. Okay. In this case, it's like a JRE clip. I think I've played JRE stuff before and it's fine. So let me grab that. Bring this over here.
You can buy into it. I haven't seen this yet.
Yeah, I'm not gonna play the whole 15 minutes, but I'm gonna show everyone a secret here, right? If I go to this button right there and I go to show transcript,
he has like a tendency like
Control F.
His guess.
FBI.
Like he just agrees with whatever guess he has on. That's from just one of what I've seen, at least recently.
And then
we'll see what he does.
Hold on. I'm looking for a specific thing. We're doing it live, people. Let me do, because it's gonna be so we'll start here.
The Hunter Biden laptop story, the New York Post.
Yeah, we have that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. I mean, basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us.
That was fast. I found that real quick. So you just show transcript and Control F, everybody.
Okay. Some folks on our team, it was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol.
Be vigilant. That's what the FBI told Facebook.
He's saying it out loud. They literally just go to these companies and they're like, "Hey, you should be doing this."
Yep.
And what are they going to do? I mean,
well, and it's technically they have people on the board too, pretty much. Like they're infecting everywhere as like
this, yeah.
Yeah. So, in 2017, Smith moved straight from the government to Meta, where he is now the global director of global content management, giving him considerable power to dictate what is allowed and what is censored from the world's biggest news and media platform. So Facebook's global director of strategic response is also a former war studies student. After graduating, Caitlin Baker worked on Middle Eastern counterterrorism policy in the Office of the Secretary of Defense in Washington and is director for Jordan and Lebanon at the National Security Council at the White House. Between 2015 and 2017, she was also VP Joe Biden's Middle East policy advisor. During this time period, the administration rapidly expanded its drone program, coming to bomb 7 countries simultaneously. So,
7 countries.
In October 2017, Baker moved seamlessly from the Defense Secretary's office to work for Facebook's strategic response team, rising to become a global director. The strategic response team decides how Facebook will react to global events like elections, wars, and coups, determining what content will be permissible and which views will be banned or suppressed. So, meet the head of the, Big Brother division on, ThoughtSpeak here at Facebook. So there are many more war study graduates in influential roles at Facebook, including Louis Babington Reynolds, public policy manager for dangerous organizations, Monica Thurmond Allen, director of public policy for campaigns and programs, Claire Akayu, whatever.
Akayui, I think.
Akayui, bless you. Intelligence lead for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Olivia Miner, intelligence analyst for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Evia Orlando, imminent risk project manager. Fiona Moody, lead regulatory litigation counsel. Dane Roth, Design Program Manager, and Kediana Cadet, Program Manager and People Experience. So, you know, just in case we find these names pop up later in our dealings. While this is certainly not to say that all those mentioned are government plants, no, we would never say something like that, or even that they are anything but model employees. This connection does come at a time when Facebook has rapidly begun intertwining itself with a national security state. In 2018, the company announced that in a bid to combat fake news, it was partnering with NATO think tank, the Atlantic Council, in a deal that gave the later significant influence on the platform's content. Today, Facebook's head of intelligence is NATO's former press officer, and a Mint Press study published last month detailed how the company has hired dozens of former CIA officials, many of whom now hold the most politically sensitive positions in the company and are in charge of deciding what billions of users see daily. Thoughts so far?
I joked about Sagar, but
This is why I really think that we kind of need to disconnect from the internet a little bit. I kind of brought that up before.
Yeah.
The central intelligence, like in a lot of intelligence agencies and a lot of these like warhead machines are putting all of their eggs in one basket, and that's in social media and the internet. And once you disconnect from that, they don't really have any other method of control. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
no, it makes sense, but it's a double-edged sword because now
talks about this too. She mentions like how a lot of these
things are interconnected groups of agencies and connections.
They're just hyper focused on social media because A, they know it works, and B, that's all they have right now.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, and you see it in every platform, they just put the little fingers in everywhere, you know? And
Because it works.
Yes. I mean, it
no one else has another, because everyone's on the internet, so they don't really have a choice.
Well, and it sows paranoia, and like you don't know who to trust. Like, it makes it harder to organize. Like, all those things are problems, you know? So, but we'll continue a little bit over to everyone's favorite platform, TikTok, which also has loads of its own problems.
I had to delete this after reading it a little bit. Yeah.
So, War Studies alumni also held several influential positions on the video platform TikTok. These include Heine Ryman Shepard, an intelligence analyst who works on threat detection and identifying hate speech, extremism, and mis- and disinformation. Michael Cayley, content strategy leader, Manish Gohil, a former risk analyst for TikTok, Alexandra Dinka, investigations lead, Jeannie Sun, safety program manager, and Todd Dudley, head of physical security. He's their Worf. They don't listen to him. You know, they tell him, no, Worf, we can't attack the ship. They're nice people. But Scott O'Brien, see, I knew that reference was coming. Meanwhile, worked for both Facebook and TikTok, first as an intelligence analyst for Facebook, where he specialized in human rights investigations in at-risk countries. According to his LinkedIn, he is now an influence operations, intelligence, and discovery analyst. God, I'm glad I took a big breath before that one. At TikTok. Before that, he worked for the infamous intelligence agency Pinkerton.
Is that supposed to be a reference to Rockefeller?
What, the Pinkerton?
Like the Pinkertons, is that like really something? Is that what they're referencing, or does that mean something else?
Maybe. I'm sure someone could Google that for us, young Jamie, if you're out there. In recent times,
Pull that shit up. Pull that shit up, Jamie.
Pull that shit up, Jamie. In recent times, TikTok has been the recipient of significant amounts of government attention from the Trump administration's threats to ban the platform altogether, to the news that President Biden was briefing TikTok stars on how they should cover the war in Ukraine, and U.S. government, it appears, performed a 100-degree turn on the app. Yes, we can control it now, yes. This occurred at the same time as the company began employing large numbers of state functionaries in key positions, including individuals from NATO, the White House, and the CIA. A Mint Press investigation detailed all this, described it as a NATO to TikTok pipeline. So, one of the things we're all on, Twitter and Google. Twitter has comparatively fewer war studies alumni, but some are in important
Yay.
positions. For instance, Global Program Manager Sean Ryan describes his role as leading a global program team that drives a holistic understanding of Twitter's dynamic risk and threat landscape while working across the cyber, physical, information platform, policy, health, and reputation domains. He notes that his analysis informs the decision-making of strategic leadership while supporting key policies across multiple teams. As vague as he can possibly put, he controls everything. Twitter's Director of Insider Risk and Investigations, Bruce A., is also a former KCL man. Bruce A. spent 23 years in the FBI, becoming a supervisory special agent, leaving the Bureau in 2020 to directly transfer to Twitter. So another King's Cross, King's College of London, war room. What do they call that? The Department of War Studies at King's College of London. Bruce is just dozens of FBI agents and analysts that Twitter has hired in the past few years, the majority of whom have been parachuted into highly politically sensitive fields such as security, content moderation, and trust and safety, thus effectively giving the Bureau considerable influence over the platform's content and outlook. Google, too, employs a number of war studies graduates, among them Asia-Pacific Information Policy Lead Jean-Jacques Sahil, Policy Advisor Grant Hurst, and Global Threat Analysis Jessica O. I mean, we had Physical Security Officer in Worf, we had O'Brien, and now we got Jean-Jacques. Like my little Star Trek brain is just going off in here. But last but not least, which I know we kind of talked a bit about this already. So journalism for a single department in one college of a university is remarkable. The impact the Department of War Studies has had on the field of journalism as well. The department pushes vastly above its weight, with alumni in most of the world's top media outlets, including CNN, NBC News, the New York Times, Reuters, and the Wall Street Journal, as well as a host of individuals populating the ranks of British state broadcaster, the BBC. Indeed, it appears that breaking into the field of journalism is the goal, then a degree from the Department of War Studies is more helpful than one from King's College London's Department of Culture, Media, and Creative Industries. It's de facto journalism school. So, I mean, I feel like this is in order.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
It's de facto journalism department is not being hired by the BBC. Who is being hired? Department of War Studies. Like, they have more people involved at the BBC from the Department of War than they do the de facto journalism at the same school. What? How is that not a giant red flag? Say again, Crab?
Just like, what does war studies mean? Is that just getting as much of the control over the narrative to
Basically,
yeah.
That's really all it is, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, I mean, technically, if we at the front of the article, it talked a bit about what the college does specifically teach in that department, and there was war history, strategies and analysis, and social studies, that kind of stuff.
It seems like their only job is to hype up more war.
Yes. Yeah, it's Department of Strategy. It's it's filled with generals. It's generals and fucking, ex-generals and wannabe generals.
But you know what,
These people are literally insane. They really want to see the world get nukes.
But it's also the people controlling
the end time.
The people controlling the narrative there, controlling the curriculum, are NATO plants. Literally. They are heads of NATO.
The people who get into this stuff are the same kind of people who are truly believe
Mm-hmm.
in this stuff at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They're fucking psychos, and they essentially control the world.
You know what I just thought of? In an alternate universe, if this department was actually taken over by lefties and like kind of flipped the script in terms of like infiltrating into these,
I mean,
social media platforms as well as, like mainstream media to advocate for like issues on the left versus, like uplifting a narrative as a means to control or to kind of dull down people's senses as to what is really going on,
right.
behind the scenes. Like, I just had that thought just came into my mind, but I think like it kind of relates to what I just talked about earlier. Like the idea
how
of
much, like how many of those are in the WEF Global Leaders? Right, have been alumni
or in the
of
world.
that.
I can imagine in the World Bank as well.
Yeah,
I'm sure there are
IMF.
going to be a few of those. Or IMF, or like,
right. Look,
or
all I want to see is like the Dangerfield movie, like, where he goes back to school, but it's this, he goes back to this department. Like, I feel like that would be
It's
good.
like what I said in the chat the other day. Like they should make a Black Mirror episode where everyone on the internet is an AI besides you.
Mm-hmm.
Or everyone on the internet's an op besides you. Like you're the only real person on the internet.
Yeah. Everyone else is just robots.
Either that or they're like a CIA operative. Like literally everyone.
Everything's controlled. You're the sole last heir to some king, and no one tells you. That kind of nonsense. But
That's
anyway. So, watchers of the show will remember some of these journalists cut their teeth in investigative outlets. Well, you'll remember that name, Bellingcat, for sure, and Graphica, both of whom are funded by the U.S. government, and both of whom pull out questionable reports demonizing official enemy nations. No fewer than 6 Bellingcat employees or contributors, including Cameron Colquhoun, Jacob Beaters, Lincoln Pigman, which I hope he has a previous job in law enforcement. Alamu, that's a weird name. Alamy Leroy, Christian Trebert, and senior investigator Nick Waters all proposed postgraduate studies within the department. Indeed, Bellingcat founder Elliot Higgins joined the Department of War Studies in 2018 as a visiting research associate.
G-Hive will rise.
Yeah. Yes. Graphica, meanwhile, is also inordinately staffed by KCL War Studies graduates. Together, these two groups pump out highly publicized intelligence reports warning of nefarious actions committed by Russia or other official enemy states, all while quietly being funded by the U.S. national security state themselves.
I just want to point.
Go ahead.
I just want to interject quick. There was one time where I went on a Jordan Sheridan Patreon only Zoom call, and I asked him specifically about Elliot Higgins, and he was like, and I'm like, you do know that he's funded by Bellingcat and all these. He's like, no, as far as I'm concerned, Elliot's like a pretty established like journalist, and he's 100% serious. He has no fucking clue. He has no idea about his background. This is Jordan Sheridan, a quote unquote. He's a journalist.
No.
He's a quote unquote.
But
he doesn't know anything about this. He doesn't know. He just erases it from his mind and just whatever Jimmy Dore was that week.
Fuck.
Yeah. I wish I didn't get a recording of that, man, dude. It was insane.
Yep.
He legitimately does not know anything about Elliot Higgins. He thinks he's just a fine journalist.
Yeah, we'll get you set up for round 2 to do that. Jimmy Dore.
Jimmy Dore.
But anyway,
listen, all the problems on the left are Jimmy Dore's fault. Everything.
You forget it's Susan Sarandon.
I know, but these characters are so divisive that like they literally cause all the problems. You notice that?
Yep. All I've seen is division here lately. That's it.
All it is. That's all it is. I see 2 camps on the left. I see people who are sympathetic to Jimmy Dore's message, and then people who fucking hate him and anyone who says anything positive about him.
Yep.
It's literally that's basically it.
McLeod brings up the state-backed nexus. Department of War Studies publishes similar work to Grafika. Indeed, its faculty was crucial in propagating the idea of Russian interference in American elections, being the source of many of the most far-reaching claims about Moscow's influence in American society. Reports published by the department accuse Russia of carrying out a campaign of information psychological warfare and advised that military spending should be increased and that NATO must re-up its commitment to countering Russia. Professor Thomas Ridd even testified before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence on the dark art of Russian meddling and condemned WikiLeaks and alternative media journalists as unwitting agents of disinformation. Putin is not he who must not be named. I want to be very clear.
Find the connection between WikiLeaks and Putin, really, please.
And the dark arts. Like look, Rasputin just was real handsome.
Dark arts.
All right.
Look at that. Look at. They have to call it the dark arts because they have to draw attention away from American propaganda.
And they also know Americans only understand Harry Potter.
Twilight.
Yes. Yeah. So many of the organizations detailed above were also identified as proposed members of a Western government-aligned counter-propaganda nexus hoping to be established by the Expose network. Expose was allegedly a secret UK government-funded initiative that would have brought together journalists and state operatives in an alliance to shape public discourse in a manner more conducive to the priorities of Western governments. So a chart showing the leadership structure of the Expose network published as part of the Integrity Initiative leak, which I have that chart here. So we start up here with the advisory panel. We got Neville Bolt at King's College. We got Peter Permarantsev, who's a consultant, Militia Pesic, right? Graham Brokey, Ben Nemo, Jessica Aro, right? They come over to the project board of Emil Khan, Lewis Broke, and Chris Donnelly, right? We've seen a few of those names before. But, and it just goes like that far down to like short-term technical assistance down here, right? Like, and look, Chris Donnelly again for the different disinformation specialist, right? And then the rapid response function, which is, I imagine, bot farms, but anyway, like, I mean, there's a ton to be recruited. Account executive. I like this is all charted out, all nicer people. But anyway, the Department of War Studies, Dr. Never Bolt was on the organization's preliminary advisory panel, along Graham Brokey of the Atlantic Council, who's a NATO think tank, and Ben Nemo, former NATO press officer and executive directors of investigations for Grafika and Facebook's current head of intelligence. Training support, meanwhile, will be provided by individuals from who? Everybody? Who's sending that? Yay! Yay, Bellingcat! In the past, Mint Press has been detailing how much of the public sphere, from social media organizations like Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, to big search engines such as Google, to think tanks and fact-checking organizations, are quietly much more closely linked to the national security state than first meets the eye. The Department of War Studies at King's College London is an important part of this state-based nexus. It is a one-stop shop for training many of the spies, think tank employees, journalists, and supposedly independent intelligence investigators who have been at the forefront of the new information war. So,
and I'm sure many of these people that you listed are in some way kind of responsible for the people that we kind of know in this space too.
Yes. Well, Elliot Higgins, at least one of them. So put simply, one department staffed by former and current military officers is training the people producing the news, the ones manipulating it, and the ones who are in charge of sorting fact from fiction and pinpointing disinformation. It is quite the system. All the while, They continually warn of the threat of foreign state-backed influence operations. To be clear, Kremlin propaganda is real, but its reach is decidedly minor in comparison to the massive disinformation campaigns being launched by the Western National Security State, and the Department of War Studies is a key part of this information war. A lot of projection from the U.S. is what it sounds like. I mean, we mentioned the Atlantic Council earlier. You know, we know a few of the people we were talking about in the space came from there, right? You know, and do a show with active members of the Atlantic Council. You know, people should go look up who we're talking about. There's a lovely article that I know almost all of us have, you know, been a part of, you know, on our Substack. If you go find that in the doobly-doo, that indienews.network will have linked to our Substacks. They should go find that. It's on Breaking Points. People should go look that up. And I'm sure there's a ton of more stuff to uncover there with them as well. You know, that was pretty much it, right? Yep, cool. Closing thoughts so far on that? Anything?
I mean, I think this is really nothing new to us, but it's the idea that, and it's not just them. Like, obviously, we talk about Saga and Jetty in connection with the Hudson Institute, which is very similar to this, you know, based on what we reported on, you know, with Breaking Points or whatever. But again, as I said, it's just the idea of like, these are people who are trained, who are meant to kind of supervise the information that is going out to us.
Yeah.
You know, intentionally or not, to control certain narratives that we see and read. And as I said, you know, the idea, like, I'm sure a lot of these people are also in effect with certain personalities that we also see on the left. That are also putting out narratives, you know, to steer clear of us, you know, from actually organizing or actually pushing for any true radical change in this country and throughout the world. So it's just kind of like, I think we've been known this, but I think the idea that like there's an actual school, like other than like think tanks that purposely are like producing people who are essentially in charge of this stuff, you know, it's not surprising, but the idea, but yeah, it's like now we have a name of a school that actually like does this on the real.
Yeah, it's like we put some pieces together and okay, here's one of them. Like, let alone all the other ones in the US that constantly pull and, you know, whatever. You know, and there's tons of psyops happening everywhere on the internet. So, you know, Kelly M in closing asks Misty in closing.
We're fucked.
Yeah.
So propaganda has existed since like probably the beginning of time, but I really think that like we live in this new sort of era where they've become so effective at the flow, controlling the flow of information that it's like nearly like impossible to decipher between what's real and what's not at this point.
No, because
I'm really trying to see, like, analyze, like, see if there's like any sort of like way out of this. If there's like any way that we could kind of like really see through. I think that's like why we kind of like put a lot of focus on independent networks.
Very much so. You know, and even then they've made it so difficult to be an independent like news source, right? Especially when all of the places that you can publish your work independently are controlled by the same people that control the narrative.
By actual think tank. Like, these people are bred and raised in war crime school, the school of war crimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
so
I'm thinking like Pete Buttigieg, you know, like possibly AOC.
Yeah,
like,
well,
obviously she's not
already ties to Langley with her from what I've heard.
So it's just the idea. It's not just.
I think Richie talked about it, didn't he?
I believe so. But so it's not just like at King's College. It's just like you can think of other colleges, you know, in America that may not necessarily have a Department of War Studies.
Yes.
But having people like these who are essentially our professors.
Right.
And are kind of like giving the talking points to their students to kind of think
Yeah,
in a
classically
certain way.
Gloria Steinem, if I remember
Right.
correctly. You know, speaking of Richie.
Unity.
But